Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Roundup. I am Jim Derry, along with the guy, the man, the guru, Spencer, the guru Urquhart, here on this Tuesday edition of Fantasy Roundup. Zach Ewing has got a really tough gig this week, so I'm filling in for him. I feel
so tough.
I feel terrible for him.
Bad for him.
He's at a convention in Las Vegas, living a really tough life in a posh hotel, and it's terrible. I don't know how he's doing it. So I told him I would take the slack, and we got a new friend, Zoe Collins-Rath, who's in the background. She's going to be a new digital producer. In fact, I know she wasn't ready for this because I didn't tell her she was going to do it, but we're going to say hello to Zoe just for a moment. Zoe, welcome to the team, and we look forward to having you on here throughout as we go along during this crazy football season.
Thanks. I'm excited to work with y'all.
All right. We'll see you soon. We wanted to introduce you to everybody. Okay, Spencer, let's get into it. Before we start the show, as always, we let everybody know about our partnership with Caesars Sportsbook. First bet is on us. Use the code NOLA. Get as much as $1,250 back on a first bet. If you haven't signed up yet, you can do so at NOLA.com/Caesars using the code NOLA. Any first bet up to $1,250, you get it back as a free bet on us, well, actually on Caesars. So we thank you for doing that if you want. Then also, Spencer, tell everybody about our newsletter. We do it every night except for tonight, 6 nights a week. Get our free newsletter in your inbox every morning, all the recap, all the great links to stuff on our bet show, everything you could possibly want. You could sign up at NOLA.com/buyyou-bets. All right, let's get into it. It was week 5 in the NFL, and it's kind of went the way of, well, the guys you expect to do well did well, and luckily I had a couple of those guys, and it was kind of chalk this week, wasn't it, Spencer?
Yeah, for the most part. They had some surprises, though, as we'll see in the top scores. But, yeah, the Buffalo Bills definitely pretty chalk there. The heaviest favorite, and they delivered in both real life and for fantasy managers.
Well, let's talk about it and start with the quarterbacks, and you talk about the Buffalo Bills. And I'm thankful to have Josh Allen at least on one of my teams. And I needed him because I was going up against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce last night. Damn. And I had a 100-point lead going into the night, and it kept getting closer and closer and closer and closer, but I survived. Josh Allen with a huge week, Spence, 35, a little over 35 points. Patrick Mahomes, 30.5.
Right, yeah, they were the cream of the crop for sure. And then Jalen Hurts sneaks into the top 5 again. He's right up there with those guys. Because of his rushing ability. He's still not the most polished passer, but he's improved in that department, and he's just an elite mobile quarterback, to where with Lamar Jackson being off this week, Jalen Hurts really kind of picked up the slack for those that like to target those dual threat quarterbacks. And in most leagues now that have shifted only 4 points per passing touchdown, those kind of guys have become the ideal targets.
Were you surprised as I was, and we talked about it? I know you're higher on Geno Smith than I am, because I think he's going to go back to being Geno Smith soon. But the fact that he had the 4th best week amongst all quarterbacks against the Saints defense that you knew was going to come at him, but he still found a way. It was mostly big plays for Geno Smith, but to have that kind of week, were you surprised at all?
Well, yeah, I was surprised he did that well, but he's got 2 legit weapons there in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, to where I'll talk about him again later, because he's one of my waiver wire targets and a DFS target. Is he somebody that, as of now, he's trending very well? Seahawks defense isn't too good. He's going to be forced to throw. So even if he takes a few sacks, as long as he hits those big plays, he's very much fantasy relevant.
If you're watching the show, we welcome in your live comments and any questions you might have for Spencer the Guru. I'm certainly not the one to ask for anything that has to do with DFS, because, my DFS is kind of stunk. I'm 3-2 in both my leagues, but my DFS stuff has not been very good. Let's talk about the running backs this week. And Austin Eckler, 2 weeks in a row now, Spence, after he started off so slowly, did nothing the first 3 weeks. I used him in my one and done league last week, and he had a great week in week 4, came back in week 5 again. Is this a trend? Is he going to be able to continue this trend?
Yeah, I think so. Austin Eckler's the real deal. He can do it on the ground and through the air. And with Justin Herbert, I think he's still a little banged up. You know, he hadn't been himself the past few weeks coming off that rib injury to where it's going to continue to be a heavy dose of Eckler. So him and then Josh Jacobs, another big week, Breece Hall, Derrick Henry coming back. These guys are, even Fournette, you know, didn't score a touchdown early until I think week 4, but he's back. All these guys that did well this week, I think, are the real deal. Running back's been kind of fickle so far, but there's still about 10 to 12 guys that you can trust on a weekly basis.
What scares me about Fournette, Spencer, is, you know, the week before, Tampa Bay forgot how to run the ball, and he got nothing. And so this week, you know, you may have been scared to use him. I mean, he's still an RB1, so you kind of have to use him. But if you went risky and took him out, I don't know why you would take him out against an Atlanta defense. But,
yeah,
I mean, he is so risky, Spence, because some weeks it's kind of feast or famine with Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, he can be a bit inconsistent, and he's kind of injury prone. I personally stayed away from him in season long, but he can be a good DFS play some weeks. I mean, look what he did this week, because he can also catch too. He's a good receiver out of the backfield.
All right, let's look at the top performers, the wide receivers from week 5. And oh man, it was so nice to have Josh Allen and Gabe Davis on the same team. And I almost benched Gabe Davis because he had been a little banged up. He didn't do much last week. And I'm like, I had a couple other options that I thought about using. And I'm glad I stuck with him because he came through big. And then no surprise with Justin Jefferson. And Devontae Adams also on my team. He helped kind of offset that Travis Kelce stuff going on last night. Big week for Gabe Davis of the Bills.
Oh, huge week. Yeah, it started off, I remember watching the red zone at the Saints game. We saw like, boom, Gabe Davis, 90-yard touchdown. I was like, man,
98?
98. Yeah, like, yeah, this is going to be a fun day. And sure enough, he ended up with the most points. And a lot of receivers went off. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, we know what they do. And then Devontae Adams, not his usual kind of night. I mean, he normally is a volume guy, but he was a big play field stretcher last night. And then, of course, Tyler Lockett torching the Saints. So, yeah, a lot of big days.
Devontae Adams may be in a little bit of trouble coming up.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad look, man.
You have to worry. Yeah,
SMH, man.
Pushing some credentials.
Yeah, they didn't just push. I mean, he shoved him. Like, he's probably going to get suspended for that. That was a bad look.
Yeah, you have to wonder if that's going to be a situation kind of like Alvin Kamara where that will be put off. If you have Devontae Adams, it's definitely something to look for and potential trouble going forward. You never know when that suspension. I mean, if he just settles with this guy, and that suspension could come as early as this year. So, but
I would think it would come soon. You know, Kamara. You know, we haven't seen the video, or Adams. I mean, the video is out there, so I would think that situation would get resolved soon.
Well, the difference is the NFL likes to wait until any judicial process goes through. So, so there is a chance that it wouldn't happen this year. But if he comes up and just settles with the guy, then once it's done with that, then there is a good chance because there's police work filed. The guy's in the hospital. Not a good look for Devontae Adams, and I'm thankful that he apologized after. But you know, this could be a mess for Devontae Adams. We'll have to see how that goes forward. And if you're a Devontae Adams owner, you need to be aware and watch this going forward, certainly. The tight ends, well. Taysom Hill, it's not really a tight end, but, you know, on my bench, Spencer, I scored the most points in my league all season long with Taysom Hill on my bench. How could you – I don't know. A lot of people must have seen it coming because in my one-and-done league, a ton of people used Taysom Hill. I didn't see it coming. I didn't use him, but there he is. Did you see this coming?
No, no one saw that coming. Some people, though, I think, used him because the Seahawks had the worst defense against tight ends. But the thing with Taysom Hill, you know, I kind of mentioned it yesterday. He's not even really a tight end. Yeah, he's a tight end, but listed as a tight end for fantasy. But he's a fullback, really. I mean, he should be. I mean, he got it was all rushing. He should probably be listed as a running back. Which I remember.
It's hard to list him. I wish there was an athlete. It's kind of like the DH in baseball.
Yeah, he should have multiple things, like because he doesn't even have a position. I remember when Taryn at the press conference asked him about that. He's like, I don't know. I just work here. Like, he doesn't even have a position.
That was a great answer, by the way. If you look, he had 1 point less than Josh Allen. That is insane. And then Travis Kelce didn't get a lot of yards, but he didn't need to. He had 1, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns for Travis Kelce. It was a huge week.
That was crazy.
Then you see some of the other usual names. Mark Andrews is almost always on this list. Not a surprise. Dallas Goedert is up here. And then Hayden Hurst, maybe a little bit of surprise, but Spence going against his former team he was pretty fired up to play against the Ravens this week. Hopefully for Saints fans, he won't do that again this week. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, he'll be probably more involved though. I'll get to him more on the I think I have him as a DFS play this week because yeah, he's a cheap, he's a cheap option. Normally doesn't do that well, but with T. Higgins banged up, he's very much in the mix.
All right, and Spencer's MVP for the week, no surprise, it was Josh Allen. 20 of 31 for 424 yards with 4 touchdowns. Highest quarterback score by almost 5 points, scored 35.16 fantasy points, depending on what league you're in. That is a lot of points, and Josh Allen certainly deserved the MVP.
Yeah, definitely. I got him in both my big money super flex leagues. Got fortunate to get high picks in both of those, and I can't overthink this. I got to go Josh Allen because in super flex it's easy to overthink. But I'm going to go crazy, go running back, wide receiver. But in those, quarterbacks are just such a premium. It's having to start too. So I'm going with the smart play here, and it's paid off.
Yeah, the league that I told you I scored 160 points. It's tough for me because I have Josh Allen, but I also have Jalen Hurts on the same team. Now I'm probably going to use Jalen Hurts as trade.
Yeah, it'd be nice if that was super flex.
And no kidding, huh? But it didn't work out that way. So I've been having to sit Jalen Hurts on my bench, and it's hard to sit a guy like that on your bench. But I actually started him in week 1, and then realized, what the heck am I doing? You got Josh Allen, but maybe he'll get a start. And they're off the same week, which hurts. They're both off in week 7.
You need to try to make a trade there.
I am actually. I have Derek Carr also, so I'll use him in week 7. But it is a weird thing. But I am trying to trade him right now because I'm actually working on getting Mark Andrews. We'll see if that works out or not. All right, let's move on. Talking about getting guys, and the waiver wire is starting to get a little thin when you get to week 6. But you point out some guys that, as of now, percentage-wise available, and some week 6 waiver wire targets that I think are interesting. Eno Benjamin kind of came out of nowhere, playing a big role for the Cardinals against the Eagles this week. He's only owned in 6.8% of leagues. And then Taysom Hill, who is a tight end in most leagues. Some leagues use him at different positions. Some leagues you can only use him as a quarterback. But most leagues he's a tight end, only owned 11.8%. I would imagine that's either changing or, if you're using the auction system, he's going to go for a high amount this week.
Yeah, he sure will. Honestly, Taysom's probably, if in league where he's a tight end, he should be the number 1 priority. Especially if you need a tight end. If you have Kelsey, try to fill out your depth, go after Benjamin or one of the receivers. But Taysom is, if you need a tight end, he's worth it because he's enough involved now in the offense to where I think he's always involved near the goal line to where he's now, I'd say, a top 12 fantasy tight end. It's not, the tight end position isn't that great. So with that, I know Taysom's not, you can't count on him every week, but I'd say most weeks he'll do better than the number 12 tight end, which is usually Irv Smith, Gerald Everett, Evan Ingram. Those guys can have some good weeks. Yeah, but Njoku's actually he's become more like top 6 to 8 probably. But anyway, Taysom is just, it's so crazy because I used to always be like, no, don't mess with Taysom for fantasy. You never know. But it was too good to ignore this week. And the amount of usage he's getting now and the offense performed well. I don't think they're going to scale back his usage.
Well, you have one name that I think is interesting that I do want to ask you about, and you got Rondale Moore on here. Does it scare you at all, look at going out, try to get Rondale Moore, that DeAndre Hopkins is about to come back?
Not too much, honestly, because I think Rondale Moore's got the slot role locked down. I was Greg Dortch, who I thought was a good pickup, but now that Moore's back, Dortch is going back to sit in the bench. So unless they would put Hopkins in the slot, we'll have to see. But I just feel like Moore and Hopkins it's a 6-game suspension, so he'll be out again this week. I'd say to take a flyer on
this
Moore.
Week, aren't they?
No, I don't think they play the. I forgot who.
Do they play this week?
They play a pretty good. I think it's a pretty good matchup for him too.
Okay.
They had.
I know he comes. Yeah, they're not off because he comes back for the Saints.
Yeah. That's man, I can't believe I can't think of this matchup. Oh yeah, Seahawks. The Seahawks. Okay. We saw the Seahawks. Great matchup. Yeah.
So if you need a quarterback this week, if you have Derek Carr as your starting quarterback, it might not be a bad idea to get a Geno Smith because that is a good matchup, an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Cardinals Seahawks. Yeah, it should be a low key shootout there. And Geno, they kind of cheated. We normally say less than 30%, but let's be real. All the quarterbacks less than 30% are hot garbage. No one's picking up Cooper Rush, Jimmy G, Bailey Zappi. I mean, no one's.
Well, you might have to though, Spencer, because now with bye weeks, I mean, I know at least like in my main league, my number one league, that's a 12-team league. My quarterback is Jalen Hurts, but my backup quarterback is Kenny Pickett because it's a keeper league. So I have him for the future. I don't necessarily want to be stuck with Kenny Pickett. So when Jalen Hurts is off in week 7, which is next week, obviously, I may have to go pick up another quarterback. And I don't know if Geno's available in my league or not, but if I got to go with Geno Smith for a week, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I figure he's available in a lot of leagues. I mean, he barely missed our theoretical cut, but I mean, I feel like he's 3% near it. I figured he was worth a mention because I know with bye weeks here there are some teams that need QBs, and I guess if he's taken, I mean, if Andy Dalton starts again, Andy Dalton could be decent, especially if Olave can make it back in time for Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that Andy Dalton is the quarterback this week. They're now not going to – they don't look like they're in any rush to bring Jameis Winston back, and really they shouldn't be. I mean, Dalton has played
let him heal up.
I mean, Dalton has played well enough. He hasn't played great by any means, but he's played well enough to get another shot, and I think he will against his former team, the Cincinnati Bengals. So
yeah,
he will have a little impetus.
Narrative.
Yeah, he'll have a little extra oomph probably to play against the Bengals.
Against the dude that took his job, Joe Burrow.
Right? All right, let's talk about they got to go. And I have there's an interesting player that you have on this list that I do want to talk about. I don't have any problems with the first 3 guys on this list. I would never, ever, ever take Jared Goff in fantasy football. Not just because he puts up a 0.
Tired of that. People hyping him up.
Exactly. I mean, I don't want anything to do with Jared Goff. Sure, he can have a great week every now and then, but he's going to stink it up at some point and probably at a crucial time. And if last week was if you went into last week at 2-2 and thinking I got Jared Goff against the Patriots and he's going to do well, he didn't. He stunk, and I don't want any part with him. And Antonio Gibson is about to lose his job again, even though he's 92.6%. Right. I don't think you can cut him, but at the same point, I certainly wouldn't want him.
Definitely bench him and maybe cut him if you're in a shallow league.
Allen Robinson, you never know what you're going to get. Matt Stafford, for some reason, is struggling. And he and Allen Robinson have not built any kind of rapport at all. So the first 3 names on your list, I am in wholehearted agreement with. I have a problem with Dalton Schultz, and I'm going to tell you why. I wouldn't want to get rid of him yet. I know he's been a little banged up, and he hasn't done anything. But that being said, I think his rapport with Dak Prescott has obviously been huge throughout the years. And with Dak coming back, I actually think Dalton Schultz could be a great buy low kind of guy because I think when Dak comes back, he's going to start picking it up again.
Yeah, he could. The thing that scares me, though, why I put him here is because I believe he re-injured the knee last week, and that's a concern to me. I feel like even when Dak comes back, if it's just going to be tough for him to ever get 100%. I feel like it'd be best if they make it, if they kind of like the Saints are doing with Jameis, like let him rest up the next few weeks to make sure he's 100%, because I feel like he rushed back and then got hurt again. So to me, unless they rule him out and you can put him on an IR spot. I mean, a lot of leagues, it's like you can't really afford to keep 2 tight ends. So if you're in a spot to where you need a tight end for this week and have a good depth, you don't want to cut any running backs and receivers. I feel like if he starts doing good, you can maybe get him back later. So to me, he's just not, the tight end is not a position to where I'm that worried about keeping 2.
It's kind of a scary proposition because if you cut him and then the minute Dak comes back and he scores a touchdown and has 60 yards, then you're like, oh man. I mean, that's a tough one, man. Which could happen. So we have about 11 or 12 minutes left in the show. If you have any comments or questions for Spencer, feel free to hit us up on any of our YouTube or Facebook pages. Again, you got about 10 or 11 minutes to ask a question or give us your comment. We're also on the NOLA News Twitter page. We thank you for joining us here on this Tuesday afternoon as the Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies are playing in the Major League Baseball playoffs. The last I looked, it's at a commercial right now, but the last I looked, it wasn't going too well for the Braves. We'll see how that goes. Kind of an interesting play there. We'll talk more about that on Bayou Bets on Thursday.
Yep, not well at all. 7-1 Phillies.
Now it's 7-1. It was 6-1 when we came on the air. All right. Well, let's talk about DFS in Week 8 and some of your top picks. Again, that name, Geno Smith, comes up. A cheap play at 5,700. And you talk about his matchup with the Cardinals. The Cardinals, they kind of limited Jalen Hurts. He had a couple rushing touchdowns early and then didn't do anything. But for the most part, the Cardinals have been pretty easy on opposing quarterbacks. So it might be a sneaky play. Ramondre Stevenson, now that Damian Pierce is hurt, Damian Harris, is hurt, that could be an interesting play as well. Ramondre Stevenson might get 22, 24 carries out of the backfield. And then talk about Gabe Davis and can he do it 2 weeks in a row? The only thing that scares me is when you got a guy that blows up and then you try to pick him again. And this week, going against the Chiefs, not the worst matchup in the world because the Chiefs don't have a tremendous defense. You saw what happened with Devontae Adams last night. And then Hayden Hurst, the Bengals going up against the Saints. I'm not sure the Saints are not terrible against the tight end, but they did give up some big plays last week.
Right. Yeah, and that's I mentioned it earlier about Hurst. Keep an eye on T. Higgins' status, and if he's trending toward being out, then lock in Hurst cheap, and then at that point you'll have a bargain at tight end. And yeah, the Gabe Davis thing, I put him back on here because last year against the Chiefs in that playoff game, he's the one that absolutely torched them and had 3 touchdowns. So I'm thinking I don't think he'll do that again, but I think he'll be able to put up around probably over 100 yards and touchdown or 2 because their defense is very vulnerable to the big play.
Now the Bills have going into last week, I know they had the number 1 defense in the NFL, so I would imagine it's still number 1 because the Steelers didn't do anything against them. What kind of game do you expect? Do you expect a shootout like we had on Monday night last night and like we had in the playoffs last year in that AFC game? Or Mahomes coming off 2 tough games now against Tampa Bay and now Vegas and having to come back down 17-0 last night. What kind of game are you expecting? Are you expecting a shootout or maybe a little bit more lower scoring than we've had the last couple times these teams have met?
I'm thinking a little more low scoring, so I probably wouldn't go pay the premium for Allen and Mahomes this week in DFS. That's why I said, Gabe Davis is reasonably priced, but like Kelsey, Diggs, Allen, Mahomes, they're just so expensive to where I don't think this game is going to be quite as much of a shootout as people are thinking, to where I'd almost be tempted to play the under. I think the over-under, they're like 53.5.
Yeah, I will definitely be playing the under in that. We all had the over last night. Spencer did a great job with the daily best bets. We are on a roll, by the way.
Almost
daily
back to even.
The bad thing is, Spence, Zach's about to touch it and is going to mess it up again. We build it back up and get us back towards the black territory. And then Spencer comes in and he's like, he might as well wear red because he's killing us.
Zach.
Zach's killing us. He's absolutely killing us.
Don't do Mariners money line parlay
exactly
with Julio Rodriguez 2 home runs.
Oh man, if you look at daily best bets and you see the Mariners in there, A, Zach Ewing has done it, and B, just come back the next day and we'll have a winning pick for you. I promise you. All right, I love you tonight. I love your sleeper. I have him. He was in my IR slot. I drafted him in the league that I did so well in this week. Brian Robinson. You gotta love this kid. The dude gets shot. He gets shot twice, and in 4 weeks he's back on the field. It is amazing. Not only is he extremely blessed, obviously, to be able to come back and just make it through as unscathed as you possibly can for something that happened to him, a traumatic experience for Brian Robinson, but he's back on the field. He rushed for like 25 yards coming back. And at some point in the near future, you got to think he's going to take Antonio Gibson's job because I think a guy like Brian Robinson, destiny is in the positive for Brian Robinson.
Right, and he gets a great matchup this week against the Bears, who they have a decent pass defense, but their rush defense, hot garbage. They get gashed. They get gashed week after week. The Packers gashed them. The Vikings gashed them. The Giants gashed them. Every team they face damn near has gashed them on the ground. And while the Commanders' running game isn't that great, I feel like Robinson should at least be able to get 50, 60 yards and probably a touchdown, being that he's the big back over there and already out-touched Gibson last week. So to me, he's a great sleeper play this week. I got him as a flex in a few deep leagues and feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, and I would say not only in DFS, Spence, but I think if you can pick him up and stash him, I think he could be a huge benefit for you come the latter few weeks of the regular season when he starts getting back up to speed, because he had already beaten out Antonio Gibson in the preseason before his unfortunate incident, Spencer. And I think that by the end of the season and into your fantasy playoffs, I think he could play a key role for you and become like a flex. I think he could be as important as a flex for you by the time we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe even an RB2. I mean, I hope y'all took my advice from that was over a month ago. I wrote that piece on him being a potential league-winning stash, and I stashed him in multiple leagues, got him back now. So I couldn't put him on the waiver wire because I think a lot of people took note of that and picked him up. He's rostered now in like 40-something% of leagues. And so if you didn't get him now, you probably missed the boat. But if he's somehow still there, get him now.
Yeah, I have him as I've stashed him away, and he's a dollar keeper for me going into next year. So even if I don't use him at all this year, I'm thinking next year he might be on a fringe of RB1 next year. I mean, if the Commanders can get some things together, so we'll see.
Yeah, that's the thing. His upside's a little bit capped being on such a crappy team. I know Matt Rule just got fired, and I hate to pick on Ron Rivera because he's a brave dude, cancer survivor, but he's next. I mean, it's a train wreck over there.
It is a mess for Ron Rivera and the Washington Commanders for sure. And speaking of that, before we go to the Listener League standings, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was watching the Colts Broncos snoozer last Thursday, and they were trying to advertise the Bears and the Commanders, I'm thinking, woo, what in the holy heck are they thinking? Why would they put those two teams together? I mean, I get you trying. Colts Broncos, okay, you think that's going to be a good game before the season starts. You got Matt Ryan and you got Jonathan Taylor for the Colts against Russell Wilson and Jerry Jeudy and
Javonte Williams
and Melvin Gordon. Yeah, but you don't know that. But why in the heck would you put the Commanders and Bears in a primetime game?
Yeah, that made no sense. I mean, we knew going in that those teams probably weren't going to be very good, but
not at all.
Whatever.
All right, let's take a look at our standings in the Listener League, or not just listeners. They watch
to buy you bets. Yeah, I guess viewers, listeners.
Viewer League. Let's call it the Viewer League.
Our loyal people.
Well, first you got to give a shout out to Bucktown Rebel. I mean, and Roy is rolling at 5-0, 700. What kind of league do you have? If there are 764 points scored through 5 weeks, Spencer, come on, man. What do we got? Superflex, and we got 6 points for passing touchdowns.
No, it's standard. It's standard settings. I mean, it's PPR, 4 points passing touchdowns. Just Bucktown Rebel's been that dominant, man. He's got Cooper Kupp was his first pick, I'm pretty sure, and he's killed it. He
has certainly killed it. I know who hasn't killed it. If you look at the bottom of that list, number 10 is very small type. That type is not befitting of a man the size of Uncle Big Nick, but it is befitting of his fantasy team because they stink. He's 1-4. Not only is he 1-4, he's 100 points behind the 8th place team, who's also 1-4, 619 points for original Saints fan Horace. I know who that Horace is.
He's got brutal luck. You'd be inside it rough, and a Trey Lance to Debo stack didn't pan out.
All right. Well, the Guru squad is up there at 3-2, tied with Bayou Bet Zach at 3-2 as well. Team Minoka also 3-2, and Bama Fikes Tommy is 4-1. Well, I mean, you got some teams doing pretty well. Yeah, and I find it interesting because in the league that I told you that I've done well, and I'm 3-2 in both my leagues. One of my main league, I'm 3-2. It's kind of a fluky 3-2. My other league, when I'm 3-2, ought to be 4-1 or 5-0. But some leagues there's a huge drop. There's 5-0, 4-1, 3-2, and then in my other league, there's a ton of 2 and I think there are 5 2 and 3 teams. So I mean, it's kind of a weird time of year. But it's also the time of year, Spencer. To me, these next few weeks are key because you know whether your team's going to be in contention or you're just going to be one of the also-rans.
For sure. Yeah, I feel like I think other than one of my best balls where it's been a disaster, I feel like I'm at least 2-3 in all my leagues to where it's, I mean, those ones that I'm 2 and 3 out to put up or shut up here these next few. And then 3 and 2s, 4 and 1s, feeling pretty good in those. So it's tough because I play in leagues where everyone's competitive and does their lineup. So it makes it tough to stay afloat in those whenever like everyone else is a shark too in there. So it's fun though. I enjoy it, and just it's been a good year so far. Hoping to keep it going here.
Well, you can get a little panicky in my main league. The rule is all division winners go to the playoffs, and anyone else that has a winning record goes to the playoffs. So, and we have a 14 game season. 7-7 is not good enough. If you go 7-7, you're not in. You got to go 8-6. So if you're sitting at 2 and 3 right now, you know that at the minimum you have to finish 6 and 3 down the stretch. Puts a little pressure on you. Whereas you're 3 and 2, you can go 5 and 4. You got a little bit of wiggle room. So this is kind of the crunch time in my league. I know some leagues you start looking towards the end and what kind of matchups you got, where your bye weeks are. Now's the time to look, because bye weeks start this week and they last all the way through the rest of the regular season in most fantasy leagues. So this is crunch time.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I think a big key is, with these bye weeks, navigating these bye weeks, is you got to be extra savvy on the wire. And also while trading, kind of schedule watch. Don't be afraid to schedule watch. Look ahead at the schedule, see who's got any cupcake matchups coming up, especially if you need the win now. Like, try to get players that, I know, like if you have Christian McCaffrey and you have a tough record, I'd try to trade him because he's got a brutal schedule coming up. They had like the 49ers, the Bucks. Like it's not going to get any easier for him in there.
Well, luckily they just played the 49ers, so he doesn't have to.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, I think it's the Bucks and a few other tough ones coming up. So it's just look at your situation and schedules, and don't be afraid to make some big moves. I've made a few trades so far and feel like they've worked out pretty well. Swung a huge deal for Justin Jefferson in a league, Hollywood Brown. Just sometimes you got to pay up, but if you feel a player's worth it, don't be scared.
I agree wholeheartedly. And look, that's pretty much the end of our show. But we will remind you, if you have any lineup questions or you have a DFS dilemma, it's getting close to game time. Always on social media, on Twitter and Instagram, ask at Spencer the Guru. He'll be glad to help you. He's got his notifications on. He sees when you're tweeting at him or you send him a message on Instagram. He's ready to answer any questions you got. You certainly don't want to go to at Jim Derry Jr. If you want to ask me about betting and what I think, my best bets have been hot. I've done very well so far with my best bets. So if you want to ask me a betting question, go ahead. But when it comes to fantasy football, look, I'm just trying. I won my league last year for the first time in like 12 years. I had to. Now I'm kind of like starting from scratch again. We'll see what happens. I'm 3 and 2. But Spencer, I know you're in a position to win some of your leagues. So ask Spencer the Guru again, at Spencer the Guru on Twitter, on Instagram. That is going to just about wrap us up. Spencer, final thoughts going into week number 6.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be a fun week. A lot of fun matchups like that Bills-Chiefs one we had talked about. The Cardinals-Seahawks could low-key be a shootout. Even Saints-Bengals should be fun with Burrow coming back to Louisiana. So, yeah, it should be cool. Bye weeks, though, we've got the Raiders, the Titans, the Texans, and the Lions on bye week. So, of course, make sure those players are out of your lineup. And
I can't start Jared Goff this week?
No, nor Davis Mills or Derek Carr.
Right. Dang it.
Yeah, but it's gonna be fun. It's not too many. None of those teams are that good, so no one should be in bye week hell. But yeah, just monitor all that. Keep up with the injury reports. Got my waiver wire column this afternoon. Gonna have the matchups column Thursday with prop plays. So just stay tuned, y'all. We got a lot going on.
We do have a lot going on, and as we do every week, stick with us. We have another show on Thursday, our Bayou Bets regular show. We also have Cashing In with Carville. Zach will be talking to James Carville as he does every week. That will be on our Bayou Bets YouTube page. If you haven't subscribed yet, check it out, and you'll get notified every time we have a show, along with my Datitude podcast, which it is not live on Thursday. Uncle Big Nick and I will be trying to stay hot with our best bets. We've done pretty well so far. And then live Datitude on all of these same YouTube pages and on our NOLA News Twitter page at 9:15 a.m. on Friday morning. We're looking forward to having you. You can ask us questions, give comments to Jeff Duncan, and tell him how, his picks kind of stink too. I mean, I'm not giving them too much grief, but anyway, we're gonna have fun with them. For Spencer the Guru, for our new friend Zoe Collins Rath, who's in the background here, I am Jim Derry. We will see you on Thursday. This has been the Fantasy Roundup Show. Y'all have a great week.